Back to The Jump. Rachel Nichols, joined by Richard Jefferson, Kendrick Perkins, and Vince Carter. And guys, we still have a few head coaching vacancies open. Doris Burke went on the Posted Up podcast with our friend Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports, and they spoke about Becky Hammon's candidacy to be a head coach in this league. Take a listen.
I have heard, and we both know many assistant coaches across this league who do a phenomenal job and get interviews. And in the process, not one time have I ever heard when somebody, and I won't mention a specific name because I can't even bring one instance to bear here, where I've heard ex-assistant coach didn't get the job where the likability and the work ethic was in play for an assistant coach. Not one time have I ever heard that. So why were Becky Hammon's candidacy was in play? Did we hear about her likability? I've just never heard that. We've heard it as it relates to players in terms of like James Harden, a little bit now Luka Doncic. Do people want to play with him? We've heard relationship situations, right, where perhaps in a head coaching situation, Rick Carlisle didn't get along with Luka. If you're going to evaluate a woman, evaluate her to the same standards that you are evaluating your male candidacy.
Look, and what Doris is talking about, any woman watching this show understands the point she is making, because there are all the code words, right? We know the code words. Yeah. She's too ambitious, which if it was a man, nobody ever said that about a man. She's not likable. Nobody ever said that about a male authority figure coach. In fact, we see men sometimes criticized for being too close or too palsy with people. You're supposed to be strong and be a voice of authority. And it's just one of those things where some of these same exact words that are used as compliments for men, the idea that they are then reasons to not hire someone if you're a woman, it cuts very deep. It's very, very hard. And Vince, we do see there are still a few open jobs. I've been talking about Teresa Witherspoon in New Orleans because she already works for that organization and already has a close relationship with a lot of players down there. And her credentials as a player herself are just impeccable. Whether it is her there or whether it's Becky Hammon somewhere else, whether it's Kara Lawson, who, to me, I would have loved to see her in Boston. I'm not saying they didn't make a good choice there, but to me, Kara Lawson would have been a great fit in Boston, where she had already been an assistant coach. How close are we, Vince, to seeing a woman as a head coach in the NBA?
Well, I'm going to say this first. I've got the opportunity to talk with, and I know Teresa Witherspoon. She demands and commands a locker room.
Amen.
So they're going to listen. She's not afraid of anyone, and she'll get in your face. And it's nothing. I mean, she's not afraid, and I think players will benefit from her. But I think we're close. We've gone from in the last 10 years to not even talking about a female having the option to get an interview to where we are now. And all Becky Hammon is doing is breaking down barriers and kicking the door down. And she will have that opportunity sooner than later because she does a great job. Popovich, one thing I love about Popovich is he will sacrifice the double technical thrown out to give his coaching staff an opportunity to grow and be in that number one position. And you've seen her command and take control of that team when she had that opportunity, just like she did in Summer League. So shouts out to Greg Popovich first and foremost for doing that for his players. He did it for Jacque Vaughn, and you see Jacque Vaughn got a job. I think she was going to get that opportunity sooner than later.
Well, I hope. But one thing I want to talk about is you can hear, sometimes you might think that it's passion, but that was pain in Doris Burke's voice.
Absolutely.
I could not
that was pain. Like, that was not passion. That was just, she knows what it takes to break down barriers. She knows what it takes to be in that position. So when she's talking about that, she is also talking about her own experience of getting to the mountaintop as one of the great broadcasters in sports history. And so she knows what it took to get there. So when she sees other women going through that, it becomes that much more difficult for her. We want to talk about likability. I was playing for the Nets when Becky Hammon was playing for the Liberty. So we would interact with each other. I was playing for the San Antonio Spurs when she was in San Antonio and starting to build that portion of her career. She's an amazing person. I've had coaches that I didn't like, and Becky was somebody that you're excited to see because you, one, know she's a baller. She respects the game and she puts in the time. So when you start hearing these negative code words thrown out there, I can understand why it'd be so disheartening, but the time is coming. There will be a time very, very shortly, in my opinion, but it's going to take somebody to go out on an edge. It's going to take a GM, it's going to take a president, and it's going to take an owner to say, like, hey, if this is the best candidate, let's give it. Let's
she's
go
qualified,
with it.
give it to her. Correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, right?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, what I was going to say is, it's just, I think it's just beautiful to even be talking about this situation, because we wouldn't have even been talking about this 20 years ago. And the fact that this is even a conversation, I think is a good thing. I think, I don't know the timetable of it, but I will say this. This is the only barrier I think that will be hard. And I think for us like Becky Hammon or Teresa Weatherspoon lacrosse, is that respect level of the locker room. And I say that because of this. We're dealing in the NBA right now where guys are getting paid $39-40 million a year. Guys are like, alphas and divas, right? We're dealing with NBA guys that are actually divas of franchises. And so with that being said, it's hard for males to demand respect in a locker room right now in the NBA. And I'm not saying a woman can't, but I think the way that coaches searches and coaching hires are going about when GMs and front offices are actually indulging and talking with their franchise players, it's going to have to be a franchise guy or the two franchise players of that organization endorse a woman heavily and say, we want her as our head coach, where it puts ownership on the organization and the organization in whole to say, they want her, we're going to hire her.
That's exactly right, Perk, and I think that will eventually happen. It'll just be interesting to see where. I do want to say before we move on, and we will, to what's going on in Dallas, but I'm watching those pictures and the video of Becky next to Coach Pop. Has anyone ever talked about Coach Pop's likability? Whether he should be...
Right. Oh, no.
Right.
Just curious.
There's one thing that Pop, he's loved, but he ain't liked. Let me say this. Wait. Before I get in trouble.
Greg Popovich. That's not what we're talking about.
Greg Popovich.
We're talking about that him sort of going around a room and being like, do you like me?
Before I get in trouble, before the trolls come out, what I'm saying is Greg Popovich is like your grandfather. His job to love you. You're not supposed to like him. He's going to be a disciplinarian. And to your point, it's not like, well, Pop isn't likable. It's like, no, his job is to make sure that you're doing your job.
And by the way Pop is, his gruffness is considered an asset, is it not?
Yeah.
Right?
A military man. I love that dude.
Right? I mean, that's just one of the things, again, it's the idea, and what Doris was talking about, too, was not all women are the same, right? Yeah. And the idea that, hey, this woman, like Greg Popovich, may be a little bit more gruff, and her style is this way, or this woman might be that way, just like the men are allowed to be different. Imagine that. All right, Vince Carter, thank you so much for joining us today. You will be back throughout the NBA Finals. Coming up, though, we're going to talk a little bit about